Hello, my name is David Pring and I was diagnosed with large B-cell lymphoma 2 years ago. I started my chemotherapy more or less immediately because the size of the tumour was incredibly large. My experience with chemotherapy, unfortunately, for the first 3 sessions was not a good one. And the main reason for this was because of a little item called neutropenic sepsis. I cannot stress high enough how dangerous neutropenic is. And you must listen to your care workers and your consultants and doctors and nurses and do everything that they tell you if you become neutropenic. On my first chemotherapy session, I felt fine. I was discharged from hospital and I went home. After about 6 days, however, I started to feel unwell. I'd been made aware of what the various symptoms were by my consultant, but I thought, hey, there's nothing really wrong with me. This will all go away. Worst thing I could have done. I became very cold, shivery, had a sore throat, nausea, not terribly good, and I still thought it would go away. 2 hours after developing these symptoms, I collapsed, and an ambulance had to be called to take me to A&E. The ambulance team were very good and I had superb care. They monitored my blood pressure, temperature, and I was well looked after until I arrived at A&E. On arrival at A&E, I was rushed straight into a specialised unit where they took blood samples and put me on a drip. About half an hour later, they confirmed that I was neutropenic sepsis and I would need to stay in hospital for 3 to 4 days on various intravenous fluids and antibiotics to improve my condition. Well, 3 to 4 days later, I felt fine and I went home. About 2 weeks later, I started my second round of chemotherapy. This time I thought, I know what to look out for if I become ill. And again, I did feel ill about 7 or 8 days after the second chemo session. This time, I was really stupid. I took paracetamol because I had a high temperature. Now, taking paracetamol is the worst possible thing you can do because it masks the symptoms that you have. And again, I became very ill and had to go to hospital. I went through the same rigmarole of being admitted to A&E, having blood samples done, and ending up in a ward. Now this time, because I delayed my situation, I was seriously ill. I was chastised by my consultant for delaying going into hospital, and I was told quite clearly that I could have died. I was in hospital for 3 weeks on various treatments, and unfortunately I had diarrhea which developed into an infection, and my blood pressure dropped considerably. So I was very, very ill, and I lost 2 stone in weight. You might ask yourself, why was this person so stupid? Well, the thing is, when you're seriously ill, you don't actually realise how ill you are. And in my case, I always thought that having various symptoms like the cold, flu, shivering, it would get better. So I can't emphasise enough how important it is to listen to your doctors and nurses when they say, if you're ill, go to hospital. So that's session 2, and after 3 weeks I was discharged and went home. Unfortunately, again, after the 3rd session of chemotherapy, I was ill. This time I wasn't so stupid. Because after the 3rd session I wasn't as ill as I had been before, and because I didn't delay going into hospital, I was actually only in there for 2 to 3 days, which was far better for me and far better for the team. And as a result of it being neutropenic 3 times, my doses of chemotherapy were lowered so that I could cope with all the various drugs which were flowing through my system. So again, I can only state highly enough that if you become ill, please listen to all the advice you were given. Don't stay at home and lie in bed and thinking you're going to get better, because you won't. Go straight to hospital. It's better to be safe than to be sorry.